Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve. Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Staats Cotsworth in an episode of Casey Crime Photographer. This episode goes back to November 2nd, 1950. This episode entitled The Deadly Wolf.
Good evening. This is Ken Roberts inviting you to listen to another adventure of Casey, crime photographer. Ace cameraman who covers the crime news of a great city. Our adventure for tonight,
The Deadly Wolf. Mid-afternoon, the cocktail lounge of a luxurious hotel in Los Angeles. A man enters, surveys the place with casual approval, and saunters toward the bar. He's about 35, well-dressed and rather good-looking, but there's nothing distinctive about him. He's the sort of man one really doesn't remember until after one knows him too well. And as he waits for one of the busy bartenders to serve him, he hums an old tune.
Hello, what'll it be for you, sir?
Oh, a martini, please, extra dry.
Yes, sir. Say, I've served you before, haven't I?
No, I checked into this hotel only this morning, and this is my first visit to the bar.
I don't mean here. Maybe in Denver. I worked up there last year.
No, I've never been in Denver.
Reno? Salt Lake? Frisco?
No, this is my first trip to the West.
Yeah? I'm an Easterner myself. I worked all over the country. I'm one of those guys with itchy travel feet.
Well, I'm sure we've never met before. I've spent the past 15 years in Europe.
I guess you just remind me of somebody.
I imagine that's it.
How's a martini?
Exactly right.
Call me when you want another. My name's Harry.
Well, I shan't want another, so I'll pay you now. Here, Harry, keep the change.
Say, thanks.
By the way, that handsome woman at the corner table over there, do you know her?
The brunette with the big diamond rings?
Yes. Her face is very familiar, and I'm wondering where...
You've probably seen a picture in the papers. There was a big story about a couple of weeks ago when she got a Reno divorce plus $1 million settlement. She's Clarissa Melish.
Oh, of course.
They used to wait on her back in Cleveland, where she comes from. I worked there in 47. Mm-hmm. She and another rich lady named Austin used to say I was the only bartender they ever met who'd make a zombie. Exactly right.
Mrs. Melish was a friend of this Mrs. Austin?
They were pals. But it was Miss Austin then. Since, she's married a banker named Colton.
Now, I'm acquainted with a Colton in the banking business. Let's see, his first name is...
this guy's full name is Roger Colton. He the one you know?
Oh, yes, and his wife's first name is...
Florence. She was Florence Austin.
Yes, they're the people.
Mrs. Melish tells me they took a trip to Europe last year. You must have met him over there.
Yes. Mr. and Mrs. Colton aren't here in the city now, by any chance?
No, they're down in Cuba now. Havana, Mrs. Melish says.
Since Mrs. Melish is alone, I shouldn't be intruding if I introduced myself and inquired about my friends, the Coltons. I'll see you later, Harry.
And thanks again, Mr.
Thank you. How do you do, Mrs. Melish?
I beg your pardon?
I see you've forgotten me. Florence Austin introduced us several years ago in Cleveland. It was before she married Roger Colton.
Oh, you're a friend of Florence's and Roger's?
I spent a few hours with them just before I flew out here in Havana.
How are they? Florence hasn't written to me in ages.
They're fine. May I sit down and order us a... I remember you had a preference for zombies.
Well, do sit down.
Thank you.
I'm terribly embarrassed. You remember even my favorite drink, and I can't recall.
Well, unlike you, I have a face that people soon forget. My name is Carlyle. Burton Carlyle.
Burton Carlyle.
Do you plan to stay here in Los Angeles for some time, Mrs. Melish?
Oh, for another month at least.
Then, if you'll permit our acquaintance to ripen, I shall try hard not to let you forget me again.
Come in, Burton.
You look lovely this evening, Clarissa. Even more so than usual.
You like this gown?
Oh, it isn't the gown or the perfection of your hair or those magnificent diamonds you're wearing. It's simply you.
Burton, you always say the right thing. I've concluded that you're an experienced wolf.
Now, do I look like a wolf?
No, which increases your danger for unprotected females. A week ago, when you came to my table in the cocktail lounge, I thought, well, what a mild, negative, innocuous man. No wonder I don't recall having met him before.
And no.
Now I'm alone in my suite with you. I sent my maid away tonight, as you requested.
Which proves that you still think me innocuous.
Merely proves that I'm very unconventional. And that I like you. Mix us a drink, will you?
Of course. You only like me, Clarissa. Last night I told you I loved you.
You did it very romantically. I almost believed you.
You didn't believe me.
The rich divorcee who's smart doesn't believe anything a man tells her. Especially a man who made her acquaintance with a lie.
A lie?
My old friend Harry, the bartender, has told me how you pumped him about me and the Coltons.
Oh. Well, I supposed he wouldn't, eventually. I had to meet you, my dear. And the bits of information I gleaned from Harry helped me toward that goal.
Again, you've made the right answer. Burton, I wish I knew more about you.
You shall. Very soon. We're really alone here.
Well, of course, darling, we're alone.
Good. Good. Now, what do you want to know about me? I'll hold you close as you tell me. Do you suspect I'm a fortune hunter who wants to marry you for your money?
Frankly, yes. But I'm very comfortable in your arms.
Clarissa, I wouldn't marry you for all the money in the world.
You wouldn't marry me?
Or any woman like you.
Burton, you're hurting my throat. Take your hands away.
I'll tell you what I am, Clarissa.
Burton!
I really am a wolf. A deadly wolf with fangs and claws that kill. Such nice diamonds you had, Mrs. Melish. You won't need them anymore.
Casey, did you see the papers this morning?
Certainly not. I only work on a paper, Ethelbert. I don't read them.
Oh, here. Have a pretzel, Casey.
Don't mind if I do.
Again? Well, anyways, Miss Williams, your Morning Express had an article in it about that fellow who's supposed to have strangled Mrs. Clarissa Melish in Los Angeles last month.
Yeah.
It said he's thought to be hiding out in this town now. Is that really true?
It's baloney.
Confidentially, pal. Rags all over the country got such a swell spread out of that L.A. hotel murder. They're printing anything now in order to keep the story alive.
Well, Burton Carlyle, or whatever his real name may be, is reported seen in a different town almost every day.
Then it kind of looks like he'll get away with the murder and robbery of Mrs. Melish, like he got away with his other murders and robberies of rich women.
Well, it's not known for sure that Burton Carlyle has killed and robbed other women.
That's just some more newspaper buildup?
Not in my book or in the cops.
Okay, so now there's no real evidence that Carlyle...
During the last 5 years, 8 other rich women have been strangled and robbed under almost identical circumstances, Annie. Crooks seldom vary their technique after a first successful job.
Successful techniques are often imitated. People in that Los Angeles hotel gave a description of Carlyle that disagrees with the descriptions of the men suspected of those previous murders.
Those L.A. descriptions disagree with each other. All of them do. All descriptions of this woman killer have disagreed, Annie. Carlyle apparently is one of those negative guys nobody really remembers.
I've met people like that. Some guys, gals too, but not so many gals, have been coming into this joint for years, yet I always have to think who they are and where I saw them before.
So our best detectives and most dangerous crooks have that elusive quality, Ethelbert, and they take full advantage of it. The descriptions of this woman killer have only one general agreement, though. He hums old songs occasionally.
Well, millions of guys hum old songs. Why, even I...
Well, you may murder the songs, but you don't murder gals.
No.
Cops haven't got a single decent lead to work on. Hey, Annie, come on. We got to get out of this joint.
Yeah, I'll say. We're due at the Ritz-Carter in, 15 minutes.
Hey, what are you going to do at that swanky hostelry?
One of those lousy assignments. The Express has an exclusive tip that the Jane Kitchener has broken her engagement to the Freddie Walsh.
We're getting a confirmation or denial from Miss Kitchener before we spring the big news on our palpitating public.
She's the oil heiress, ain't she?
Heiress. Yeah, worth about $50 million. They say she usually carries a big wad of it around with her, too, for spending money.
Oh, now, most of her spending's for charity, Casey. And she's not one of the cafe society glamour pussies.
From what I've heard, she's a cold-boiled potato. She doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't,
What?
well, approve of modern bathing suits.
Well, she's a bit old-fashioned, but she's a nice little thing. Now, I've met her.
I haven't met an old-fashioned girl for years.
Who wants to meet one?
Well, you're going to. Come on, modern man.
Okay. See you later this evening, pal.
So long, Ethelbert.
So long. Gee, I'm glad it ain't true that woman killer's in this town. Women is something we can't spare here.
The report you heard is altogether correct, Miss Williams. Mr. Walsh and I have broken our engagement.
Well, for what reason, Miss Kitchener?
Well, that's a personal matter. I consented to give you this interview because your publisher's an old friend of my father's, but I really can't say any more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm expecting guests.
Oh, well, may I take a picture of you before we go, Miss Kitchener?
All right, Mr. Casey.
Thank you. Will you stand over there by the piano, yeah?
Very well.
Hey, Miss Kitchener, you look lovely. I haven't seen anything like that gown that you have on. Well, it must be the latest from Paris.
It was 20 years ago when my mother wore it.
Your mother?
She wore it to a ball only a week before she died. I was just a child then, but I've never forgotten how pretty she looked. I kept the gown. Tonight I put it on for the first time.
Oh, tonight is a special occasion, Miss Kitchener?
Yes. Will you take your picture now and excuse me?
Yes, sure.
Oh, I'll have to answer that. I've given my servants the evening off.
Hello, Jane.
Oh, come in, Robert. Oh, where's your mother?
She phoned that she'll be slightly delayed. She'll join us here shortly.
Oh.
Oh, you have guests?
This lady and gentleman are from the Morning Express. They're leaving right away. Miss Williams, Mr. Casey, this is Mr. Byron.
Mr. Byron?
All right, it's a pleasure.
Sit down, Robert. Now, Mr. Casey, I hope you won't think me rude.
Oh, no, you've been very kind. Good night, Miss Kitchener, and Mr.
Byron, Robert Byron.
Good night.
Night, and thanks again.
Yeah, you bet.
Not at all.
Why were those newspaper people here, Jane?
To inquire about my engagement to Fred. I told them I'd broken it.
Oh. Did you tell them why?
Oh, no. They know nothing about you. Robert, you said you were bringing your mother here to meet me. I sent the servants away as you requested so that the three of us could be completely alone, but... Well, since your mother's been delayed...
You're worried about the conventions?
Well, naturally.
That's considered rather silly in these days.
I don't consider it silly.
You're very different from almost every other woman I've known.
I'm sure I'm not at all unique. We'll go down to the lobby and wait for your mother.
Oh, but she'll come directly to your suite.
I'll wait here for her, and you go down to the lobby.
Oh, darling, that'd be ridiculous.
Do you think your mother would consider it so?
Well, You're lovely in that gown, Jane.
Don't try to change the subject.
My mother once had a gown like that.
Be a good boy now and get out of here.
Well, we must be alone, or you wouldn't be so insistent.
Of course we're alone. And I don't want to be.
Alone?
Robert, why do you look at me like that?
We're alone.
You frighten me, Robert.
All alone.
Don't come any closer. Go away. Don't touch me. Don't.
November 2nd, 1950, Casey Crime Photographer on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, more of Casey Crime Photographer from November 2nd, 1950.
Hey, bellboy!
Huh?
Bellboy!
Yes, sir?
The guy who just got into that cab, where was he going from here?
It's against our rules to give information concerning our guests.
Oh, that guy's a murderer. I was a bartender at the L.A. hotel where he killed Mrs. Melish. That guy is Burton Carlyle.
Carlyle?
Get the cops after him quick and find out what dame he strangled here.
Carlyle got away, Captain Logan?
Yeah, Miss Williams. He didn't go to Union Terminal where he'd told the driver to take him.
No, he may have seen that bartender, Swanson, and figured he'd been recognized. He'd think we had that guy within reaching distance of us tonight.
Well, no, but how could we have suspected that the man introduced as Robert Byron was really Burton Carlyle?
Nobody ever suspects that egg until too late.
Oh, poor little Jane Kitchener. Why'd she have to be killed?
She wasn't.
What?
Miss Kitchener wasn't even hurt.
Well, the report we got...
I know. I was brought here with a murder report, but the guy who sent it in jumped the gun. When the house dick learned that Carlyle had called on Miss Kitchener, they rushed up to this suite expecting to find a dead woman. The little gal was having a hysterical crying fit when they busted in, but otherwise she was okay.
She was hysterical because he tried to kill her?
He didn't even lay a hand on her.
He didn't?
He didn't?
This thing's kind of screwy. She says he started to reach for her, and there was an insane look in his eyes, and then suddenly he dropped his hands, mumbled an apology, and walked out. She was hysterical because she sensed his intentions, and before that, she'd fallen so hard for the guy she planned to marry him.
Oh, so that's why she broke her engagement to Freddie Walsh, Casey.
Yeah.
Well, it seems Carlyle, Byron, had told her he was bringing his mother to meet her tonight. Miss Kitchener is one of those straight-laced gals, so he obviously pulled the mother gag in order to get her alone.
And he didn't even hurt her.
I can't figure it.
Hey, can we talk to Miss Kitchener, Logan?
No, not tonight. The doc gave her a shot to put her to sleep. After she was told who her boyfriend really was, the shock wasn't too good for her.
I can imagine.
Of course, you searched the rooms Carlyle occupied
Oh,
here.
sure.
Did you find anything that might lead to...
Nothing that looks very hot, just an old photograph.
What, a photograph?
Of a woman taken about 25 years ago. Probably slipped out of his suitcase.
Well, can we see it?
Yeah, but there's to be no mention of it in your paper. I'm not tipping Carlyle that we have the thing.
Oh, okay, it's off the record.
Here.
She's a sweet-looking woman.
Hey, the name of the photographer who took this picture is at the bottom. Timmons. And the name of the town.
Timmons of Lakeview.
Lakeview's only about 100 miles from here.
I'm taking a trip up there tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
Okay, but you may be wasting your time. It's my job to go.
I got a hunch it won't be wasted time. And, pal, I've got another hunch. A hunch that no newspaper guy should ever get.
What?
That you ought to kill the entire story of what happened tonight.
Kill the story?
Yes, sir, all of it, Annie. Swanson's recognition of Carlyle, Jane Kitchener's escape, everything. So Carlyle will believe that Miss Kitchener never even notified the police.
It's the biggest news, Casey. It's front page.
Put that bartender under wraps, Logan. Tell the hotel people and Miss Kitchener to clam up and give all papers a hush-hush order.
Casey, this is the first time I ever got that kind of advice from a news hound. I'll take it.
Oh, now you should be thrown to the squirrels for this, Casey.
Oh, no, Annie. The big story will be Carlyle's arrest, and we'll play for an exclusive on that. Logan, I'll be with you tomorrow when you leave for Lakeville to talk to that photographer.
I took this picture, Captain, 20 years ago, I'd say. It was shortly before the subject's death.
Oh, the subject of this photograph is dead, Mr. Timmons?
Died of pneumonia.
Well, who was she?
Mrs. Oswald Vinton, a very fine woman. I was a neighbor for many years, and we attended the same church.
She was a pretty straight-laced woman, wasn't she, Mr. Timmons?
Yes, sir. She set and maintained a high moral standard for herself and her son, Mr. Casey. She was a widow.
She had an only son?
Yes, Oswald Jr., an extremely well-behaved boy. He and his mother were inseparable, and her death was a great blow to him. He was only about 15 at the time.
Well, you know what happened to this Oswald Jr.?
No. Relatives took him out west to live, and I've heard nothing from him since. Why are you gentlemen interested in... Where did you get this picture?
Oh, well, it was found on a dead man, Mr. Timmons. We're trying to identify him.
Aye, charcoal. Oswald would be sure to carry this photograph of his mother. It was the last she had taken. The dead man must be him.
This Oswald Vinton was only 15 when you saw him there?
Yes, about that.
Yeah, well, look, can you describe him, Mr. Timmons?
Well, I knew the boy so well I should be able to. Strange. I can't bring an image of him to my mind.
You can't?
No. There was nothing striking about him that stays fixed in my memory. All that I can really recall is that he seemed to care nothing about anybody but his mother. And he had a habit that was rather irritating of humming sentimental old songs. Well, I'm sorry I can't be of greater help to you.
You've helped plenty, Mr. Timmons, and thanks a million. Logan, let's go.
Yeah, I may get in touch with you later, Mr. Timmons.
Well, I'll be at your service, Captain.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye. Well, he couldn't have given us a better description, pal.
What does it get us? Apparently the real name of our killer wolf is Oswald Vinton, and he had a doting mother.
Listen, Logan, I think he developed what the psychiatrists call a mother complex.
So what?
So it finally made him go haywire and start choking gals like Clarissa Melish. Now, listen, all of the 9 women strangled by this guy were direct opposites of his mother. They were unconventional, fast babes who did all the things Mama had taught her only son to despise. Well, I think his real motive is hatred of a type. He proved that last night when he didn't hurt Jane Kitchener. Because I think she was the same type as his mother. In that old-fashioned dress she had on, he may have seen her all of a sudden as his mother.
Well, you may be right, but it doesn't help me get my hands on him.
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh.
I think we can make him walk right into your midst by using the dear old power of the press and Jane Kitchener.
From November 2nd, 1950, Casey, crime photographer. The conclusion follows these words. You're listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Heard on great radio stations like KPYK 1570 in Terrell, Texas. Also KBYG. That is in Big Spring, Texas. And we are also heard on KACT in Andrews, Texas. And now, more of Casey, crime photographer. The conclusion, November 2nd, 1950.
Albert.
Oh, yes, Mercedes.
Must you gaze at the sea and hum those old songs? I am very poor company, it seems.
Well, I beg your pardon, my dear.
Darling, light me a cigarette.
Surely. Shall I order another drink?
No, not now. Sitting here on the beach have made me lazy. It's too much trouble to lift a glass.
We'll be lazy together tonight. In your apartment. Alone.
Yes. I have already told my servants to go out.
Until tonight, every moment will seem an hour.
That romantic speech is what is called shop-worn, Albert.
I'll try to do better next time.
I hope you do. I do not like romance that smells of mothballs. Speaking of romance, did you see this morning's paper?
No, I was in too great a hurry to meet you.
Oh, then you did not read the silly story about that so rich Jane Kitchener.
Jane Kitchener?
Yes. Have you ever met her?
Well, no.
I have. She is a ridiculous little thing.
What did the paper say about her?
She is very sick.
Sick?
Of pneumonia.
Pneumonia?
Brought on by a general physical breakdown. Caused, the papers say, by a broken-up romance.
Tell me about it.
It seems she gave Freddie Walsh back his engagement ring several weeks ago because she had fallen hard for another man. Then the other man walked out. Poor old-fashioned Jane could not take it.
I see.
3 husbands have walked out on me. But do I look unhappy?
Did the paper say where Miss Kitchener is?
She's in the hospital. The one her father endowed. It is named after her mother. The Mabel Kitchener.
Mercedes, will you excuse me? I must go back to my hotel.
But what about our rendezvous tonight?
It is cancelled, to my regret. Because, Mercedes, you're the sort of woman I love to find alone.
There he is, Captain Logan, the man getting out of that cab.
Thanks, Miss Kitchener. I'll let him come through the hospital door before I take him. Well, Casey, your cockeyed scheme worked.
Yeah, we knew he'd fallen for it after that long-distance call came through to the hospital inquiring about Miss Kitchener's chances.
When they told him I was desperately ill, Miss Williams, he came to me.
No, don't think of what he's doing now, Miss Kitchener. Think of what he's done.
Yes, I must.
Here he comes, Logan.
And here he goes. Hello, Oswald Vinton.
What? Let me go.
You're a collector of jewelry. Here's a pair of bracelets for you.
What's the meaning of this? What? Jane,
Yes.
you're not ill. It was a trick.
Yeah, it's not the nicest way to trap a guy, Oswald, but our consciences aren't going to bother us much about it.
My conscience feels swell. For now, a few gals are going to enjoy longer lives. Come on, let's take them in, boys.
Annie, Miss Kitchener's crying. Look at that.
Mm.
And what has that insignificant-looking guy got that made all the femmes fall for him, huh?
Casey, if he wasn't on his way to jail, I think I'd try to find out.
Huh?
We gals crave romance, and if we don't get it from overwhelming personalities like yours,
Well, there are a lot of Oswalds.
Indeed. November 2nd, 1950. Casey, crime photographer, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, Part 3 of the 5-part Yours Truly Johnny Dollar story, The Valentine Caper. This episode originally broadcast November 2nd, 1955.
From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
This is Ann Ward, Mrs. Valentine. Have you heard anything about Dan?
Nothing, Mrs. Valentine. The police are looking everywhere for him.
I went to the hospital tonight and they told me he walked out. He might die, Mr. Dollar.
I know, Mrs. Valentine.
Did you tell anyone I was here in New Orleans?
If you mean, did I mention it to the police? No.
Thank you, Mr. Dollar. That was very kind of you.
But it makes me mad that I didn't, Mrs. Valentine. I know you don't want anybody to find you're related to him because of your daughter. But I also think you could help the police in this situation. You could help them find Dan and put him back in a hospital.
Mr. Dollar, would you come over and talk to me, please?
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the New Britain Mutual Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Valentine matter. Some more expense. I believe this is item 5. Yeah, $4. 4 drinks for myself. When a next big shot of the roaring 20s like Dan Valentine carries a $50,000 life insurance policy and walks down the street one day and gets himself shot and refuses to disclose who fired the bullets, I have to do the worrying for the insurance company. When he decides to leave a hospital bed minus a pint or two of blood, I have to worry some more. I needed those drinks. You can just say I liked what I'd seen of the guy, and I didn't want him to walk around New Orleans bleeding to death.
In here, please, Mr. Dollar.
The wife, who hadn't seen or heard from him for 13 years, looked pale and wan. It was obvious that the strain was beginning to tell on her, although she tried hard not to show it.
Doesn't it ever cool off in New Orleans?
Sometimes. But I'm not here to talk about the weather, Mrs. Valentine. You know that.
Yes, I know.
Well, don't just stand there and give me the tears, then. If you've got anything to say, say it. If you know anything that'll help, let me know about it.
You're perfectly right in being angry with me. Mr. Dollar, I honestly don't know where Dan is.
Well, do you know why he'd get up out of a hospital bed and endanger his life?
I have an idea he might have wanted to see somebody.
Who?
I don't know.
The 2 men who shot at him?
Perhaps. I just don't know.
We aren't getting anywhere, Mrs. Valentine. Look, I'm going to talk to you frankly. Why did he come here to live in New Orleans?
Well,
You live in New England with your daughter, Teresa. Obviously, Dan thinks a great deal of you and her. He's given you everything, provided for you with all of his troubles. Spent 13 years in prison. I can imagine his thoughts about you and her while he was in there. And yet he comes out and lives 2,000 miles away from you.
He didn't want to interfere with Teresa in any way.
Sure. But it seems to me he'd want to look at you. At her, certainly. Even if it was a matter of living in Boston and taking a bus to New Salem and standing on a street corner one day to watch the 2 of you cross the street. That sound reasonable to you?
If you put it that way.
Well, look, there's some reason he picked New Orleans. Some reason he didn't give himself the little gratification of just looking at you and Teresa. Why? Why here?
I'm sure I don't know.
And why is he running around now?
I can't answer that either.
But it must have something to do with you and your daughter. Obviously, you're the only ones he ever cared about. Well?
I honestly don't know.
Well, and I can't help you, and I can't help myself or him.
You mentioned his having a reason to be in New Orleans. Maybe...
What?
There was a man named Webster, Conrad Webster. He was a member of the Illinois Bar once in those days. Did a great deal of work for Dan and friends of Dan. I think he lived here.
Wait a minute. I've seen that name. Yeah, on copies of the insurance policy. A man named Webster had the power of attorney. He bought the insurance. There's a trust in there for your daughter.
Yes, Conrad Webster was an old friend of Dan's. I don't even know whether he's alive now or not. He drank a great deal later on. I think he lived here.
Was he the kind of friend Dan would go to if he needed help?
Yes, I think so.
All right.
What are you going to do?
It's just something to look into. I'll try and find Webster, and maybe I can find your husband.
Thank you for coming by. I needed somebody to talk to. What?
I hope he stays alive, Mrs. Valentine. Item 7, $16. The money it cost me to find out the location of Conrad Webster. I started at his last known address, followed a series of bars, and finally got information from a bartender that led me to the crummier half of a decaying duplex on Gentilly Street. Everything was quiet for Gentilly Street.
Young man, the drugstore delivers what I need most. The telegraph office what I dread most. Obviously, you represent neither, and therefore you are no concern of mine.
Wait a minute. Are you Mr. Webster? Conrad Webster?
I am he, and I am drunk and disheveled, and it is 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'd like to talk with you. May I come in?
You may not.
This isn't exactly the hour for making calls, but I did stop by and pick up something to take the edge off.
Ted? Huh?
It's bonded.
Oh, inside. Yeah. Now then, you were going to apologize.
Here you are, Mr. Webster.
Oh, well. Now then, as long as this lasts, you will last.
All right. I'm looking for a man.
The entire world is looking for a man. Just one man. A man they blindly presume will break off these shackles that bind us and lead us forth into eternal justice.
Yeah, sure, but that's not why
An ironic anticipation.
I'm talking about Dan Valentine.
You are?
Yes, I'm a friend of his.
No, you don't come from that place. The pallet is not with you. You lie.
I didn't say I was in jail with him.
And where else would he have made friends these long years?
He's out of prison now. He's been out for 3 months.
And I'm aware of that.
Did you know he was shot at yesterday? 3 hours ago, he left his hospital bed. I thought he might have come to you. Is he here?
He is not.
Do you know where he is?
I do not.
Mr. Webster, if Valentine isn't back in the hospital pretty soon, he'll die.
Why is the phenomenon of death so persistently alarming? So he will die. They all die. Usually from a bullet.
And that's what's going to happen to him. 2 bullets he stopped yesterday. Do you understand me?
Acutely. You've impressed me with the urgency of his situation. But Dan Valentine is not here, nor has he been here, nor has he contacted me, nor do I know where to contact him.
All right, Mr. Webster, all right. I guess I believe you.
You know, your concern for him is a distressing irritation. Well, what is the reason for it?
I'm an insurance investigator, and it's my job to keep him alive. More than that, I like him. I told you I was his friend. I think he deserves to live.
You, his friend? No. You are too young to be his friend. His friends, for the most part, are gone. Like the long years, like Homburg hats and the Charleston and Lime Ricky. The ones who are left are broken and tired and faded, with old faces like mine, like his. And we should be gone, too. Another age is here. This is my sadness. As for yours, Dan Valentine should never have lived in that age or this age. He was meant to be an explorer, a pioneer who conquered a wilderness, not a racketeer who conquered a west side.
Are you sure you're his friend, Mr. Webster?
I once thought so. He once thought so. Now, I haven't strength enough to be anyone's friend. What's your name?
Johnny Dollar.
Good night, Mr. Dollar.
The look in Conrad Webster's eyes held the same sort of sadness I had seen in Valentine's eyes. But they were different, too. They held a weakness. The strong, sad eyes were somewhere else in the city, walking alone, probably looking for two gunmen, and the lifeblood was slowly draining from the body that sparked them. I went back to my hotel and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. I was still rolling and tossing at 7:30 the next morning when orange juice coffee in the morning paper came up. A nationwide syndicate had picked up the new development in the Valentine shooting and gone to work on it. Among other names they mentioned in giving a resume of Valentine's career were his wife and daughter, living in New Salem under the name of Ward.
Hello?
This is Johnny Dollar. I just read the morning paper, Mrs. Valentine.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry it broke for you this way.
That's very kind of you to say so. Maybe it's for the better, anyhow. For years I've been wanting to tell Teresa who her father is, what he's like. I'm going to call her later today. Tell her where I am, explain why I'm here. I think she can take it.
You're doing pretty well yourself.
Thanks again. Any word yet?
No, we still can't find him.
Mr. Webster, did you find him?
Yes, he wasn't much help.
The New England paper said that Mrs. Ward was out of town. Sooner or later they'll find out what town Mrs. Ward is in, I'm afraid.
Well, maybe you'd better get another hotel. Use another name.
Yes.
All right, I'll wait to hear from you.
Mr. Dollar.
Yes?
Thank you.
I put in another call to Inspector DeBaca and asked him about developments. Valentine was still unlocated. They were covering drugstores and doctors' offices where he might seek assistance. The two unidentified men who had shot him were still unidentified. The police weren't able to dig up any more witnesses or get any line on the car. By 4 in the afternoon, Mrs. Valentine had still not called me to report a new address. I got worried and went over to the Roosevelt to see what was what. I was surprised to see Inspector DeBaca in the lobby talking to the bell captain.
All right, son. If you remember anything else, call me here.
Yes, sir, I sure will.
Hi.
Hi, Dollar. Well, you want to talk first or you want me to? All right, I'll talk first. Mrs. Valentine's been staying here under the name of Ann Ward. You knew that.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say anything to me?
She asked me not to.
Doesn't make any difference now, anyhow. That boy over there called us a little while ago. He said that Dan Valentine came in here this afternoon, went upstairs, came back down 15 minutes later with Mrs. Valentine. They both left together.
Yeah, he must have seen the story in this morning's paper and guessed she was in town.
That's the way I see it. Well, we're right back where we started from, and I'm about sick of it.
We're a little better off. 2 people are easier to find than 1. We found them all right at 7 o'clock that night, and it was easy. 3 squad cars were already drawn up in front of the little hotel, and I noticed with a sinking heart that a hearse was there also. Dan Valentine and his wife were dead.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Valentine matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, proof that the murder of Dan Valentine and his wife aren't the only murders to be solved. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for another exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
November 2nd, 1955, yours truly, Johnny Dollar on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. If you want to start building your classic radio collection in an easy way, contact my friend Ted at RadioMemories.com. He is just getting a whole bunch of new episodes of Screen Director's Playhouse, Lum and Abner, Let George Do It, The College Quiz Bowl, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, CBS Radio Mystery Theater, and more. And go check with him. He supplies shows on cassette, CD, or flash drive for your computer in the finest quality available. Check with Ted, RadioMemories.com, and tell him I sent you by. He supplies a lot of shows for us here. RadioMemories.com. If you miss a day of our shows, you don't have to miss a single one. You can find them all at classicradio.stream. That's classicradio.stream. There you can stream our shows on demand. You can see a list of places where our shows are available for download by a podcast. You can also learn more about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can find our social media links. You can contact me. And if you want to help us acquire more great radio shows for our collection here, you can buy me a coffee. That buy me a coffee money helps to expand our collection. That's at classicradio.stream. Classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in, and tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.